In terms of watching the movie, how did it make you reflect on your time? Did it take you? Were there certain incidences that really took you straight back to, what really happened to you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there was parts that was very, very strong for me to see, especially the first time. And I would say, because it's not a spoiler, I mean, it's when it comes to the house where the players lives, the player's house, it looks a lot like it did in the house we lived in, like, because they had also they got the opportunity to actually see the house where I lived, and so they were able to replicate some of the style in there. So that was strong, but also the feeling then that he's stepping in with that. Yeah, you don't know the language, you feel quite lost, you feel like, okay, what are people talking about, all that, the confusion, that really struck me the first time, like, wow, this is really how it was, this is how it felt, and then of course the competitiveness that builds up in this house was very similar, where you have this, everyone wants to be on top, and you're ready to make whatever to get there. And then I think there's also a scene in the ending with his mother, for example, that's very very, very close to how I wrote it in the book, and how it was, when Martin comes to a place where he don't know the way out anymore, and he had been through this collapse and this suicide attempt. So I mean, it's a lot, but as I said in the beginning, it's mostly the journey that I really feel he was very true to that, even though there's some biographical facts that he have dramatized some parts and so on. He's very true to a boy getting stuck in his dream, and not being able to find a way out. So yeah, I could pick many situations from the movie that is very, very close to how it felt and how it was.
Yeah. I mean, we're in times now where there's a lot more sort of mental health discussion. I mean, not necessarily. I don't know necessarily whether that's transformed itself into the way that clubs now work, but just at the time, like, was there anything around mental health? Did you experience anything in the wider culture, and particularly in the clubs, where they were dealing with your mental health at all?
Not at all. I mean, you had, I remember when we were with the under 17 national team, then you had, like, when you were at these camps, you had an hour or two where you worked with the mental stuff, it was called, it had some topic, I don't know, but then was always about, imagining how you would do a better performance at the pitch. Okay. It was that kind of, it was not about, okay, how do you feel, like, who do you feel like, the existential things that a lot of these teenagers are, having thoughts around, so it was very much focused to the performance in a way. And I don't know, I mean, I speak with the players from time to time, and I also lecture every year for the national team, under 17, under 16, and so on. So I hear a lot of stories from the players, of course. And some players say it's, they are in clubs where they have much more of an organization around these things today. They have maybe a therapist, or continually talk to a therapist or so. But the other players just say, yeah, it's way worse in my club than this is shown in the book or in the movie. So I think it's both. I think there are some clubs that really takes this serious and somehow have understood how also the performance on the pitch is connected to a general sense of health in how you feel and the psychological aspects of it. And then there's other that still keep pushing some agenda where it's more about the strongest survives. Are you fit enough to make it or not, rather than looking at the individuals, like, okay, how do we create an environment that will make the most out of this player? It's different perspectives there. So I think it's both. And what's important to say as well is that today, I mean, it's much more money in football. It's much, in one way, higher pressure on the player. it's much more exposure after, you know, the entrance of social media and all these things.
Yeah.
So in many ways, it's much more important than ever for clubs and you know, the football federations in general to work with these questions and take a, you know, serious look at it.
Yeah. I mean, I've done a little bit of work with some former players who work with clubs now, and like you said, they still say there's no consistency, and it's kind of very different depending on where you are. But there's
and very reactive, I think. I mean, it's almost, it becomes sometimes, I think, almost like this greenwashing thing that some, you know, companies does sometimes. Okay, now we need to, you know, show that we do this, rather than actually understanding that this job is important for the improvement of the player, not just as individuals, but actually also as players. I mean, and I think that's the knowledge and understanding that, you know, it's lacking still. It becomes much more of a reactive thing, like, okay, we have to work with this because it's a topic, you know.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
as you say about the consistency, it's important that, you know, it's
and you know, what was sort of clear in the film in particular was just the idea that, you know, you're young, you know, you're young, away from home, strange environment. I mean, you know, that's an extraordinary amount of pressure to, you know, anyway, that environment is difficult, such a male environment where there's no weakness or anything like that. Be away as well from family. And I suppose in that sense, did you really, as you started to find things tough, were you aware of what was happening to you? Could you fully comprehend that you were struggling?
No, I didn't have a language for it. That's also why it takes such a dramatic, you know, that's why it becomes so dramatic. And I think that's the problem, and the kind of what's both the book is exploring, but also the film is kind of showing that when a young man who have just been, you know, focused on one thing and haven't really kind of created a language for his emotions, and not been grown up in a society where this is okay, that men show emotion or talk about emotion, then sooner or later, if this person gets into a situation with a lot of pressure, or, you know, where he can't escape, this violence will take place, and that can be directed to others, or it can be directed to himself. So it's very much you know, I think this movie is saying that as well. Like, it's important for men to have room to show emotions and to speak, because the consequences, if they are not allowed, or if we don't create, you know, places where this is allowed, or support this, then they are catastrophic, basically. I mean, you have a lot of men committing suicide and so on, and a lot of players feeling very, very bad in the football world, like when it comes to these questions around mental health. I mean, you have studies on that. Fifth Pro did just a couple of years ago, with high numbers of players who explain, or I mean, tells that they have suffered from this. So yeah, I think this being a man and not having the language, or not having learned to speak about emotions, and then being away, not having the language and so on, and in a very competitive and like hyper capitalistic kind of small environment, it can be a dangerous cocktail.
Well, and at that elite level, I mean, you must have found it that you don't want to betray any kind of weakness or any sense is going wrong, because you might not get picked, and that's your entire life.
Exactly. You can't show it to anyone. You can't show it to your teammates, or, because I get that question a lot, like, why didn't you tell the teammate, to the coach? I mean, because then I would never get a chance to play. I mean, if you show it to someone in the team or other teams, or, you know, you show weakness, and I mean, this culture of football and at that level is built on this idea of strength and weakness. I mean, it's very simple in that way, but as I say again, I think that having that narrow perspective also makes less good players come forward that could have been very good, you know, that you know, maybe needs another environment, or need another attitudes around them. to to become the best they can be. So
yeah, definitely. The scenes of the actual matches are really effective as well in the movie. I thought they were really strong, and the way it sort of hones on them. Did it? How can you remember like how it affected you on the pitch? Were you having, was it manifesting itself in sort of physical ways for you on the pitch?
I think that's a little bit of a dramatization in the movie. I would say I didn't have that physical effect in that way when I started to feel bad. It was more outside the pitch.
Yeah.
Somehow for me in real life, it was more like, okay, it was also nice sometimes to get out of the pitch because I was so much in my head as well, so I think in that sense there is some parts there. Martin have problems with his chest and so on. That's more his. It's a way in the movie to tell about that something is wrong. He feels that something is wrong and that this feeling inside are starting to express itself in different ways. But from what I can remember, I didn't feel that when I played on the pitch. When I played, basically I felt a lot more outside, and the feeling of being trapped there and not being able to move. I mean, we were in the house as it is a lot in the movie as well, a lot of rules around that, and yeah.
How important was making notes for you then at that time? And obviously that developed sort of into the book, but was that a real solace for you?
Yeah, it was super important, and in the movie, I mean, Martin is taking notes and so on, and they somehow go from being things he tells himself to perform better on the pitch, and then it's more you don't really know what he's writing. And I think that's something that Ronnie really picked from real life, that I had this notebook, and I also in real life got the guitar later to kind of have something to do outside the pitch while we were kind of locked in this house. And so writing songs and writing lyrics and writing poetry and all that became super important for me. And part of the collapse in real life was also that these papers and poems and lyrics were taken away from me, from the room. They went in there and took it, and they said that in a football player's room there should not be papers laying around. So this was part of really a trigger in real life, that okay, because I have, you have your right to express yourself in papers and so on. So that became a very clear collision that was hard for me to kind of navigate out of.
And were you having similar sort of talks or feeling the pressure from, at the club level, sort of off the training pitch with, the business people of the club?
I mean, we met them from time to time, but mostly we had to do with our coach, like in I would say in the film, the business person, I mean, that played by Lombardi there, who makes it, he does a brilliant performance, being this, cold kind of boss for the team, or but in real life, yeah, we had to do with them, and they were there during the games, and they sometimes came into the dressing room and so on. But there was much more kind of we were much more one-to-one with the coach, our regular coach. Then we met, I mean, the owner of Inter, we met, he came when we had some cup final, and wished us good luck and so on. But you have so many different levels of bosses as well. So the suits are kind of, it's a cloud of suits, and who's the top, but then you have a lot of middle bosses around there.
Yeah. I also thought the film was really good at looking at sort of bullying as well amongst men, amongst male groups, amongst boys, just how sort of subtle it can be, and about ignoring someone, leaving them out, and I thought that was very nicely put together. Was that something that you sort of experienced in that kind of way?
No, I experienced that definitely. And then there was also some guys that were really good to me. I mean, in the movie, you have a general sense that everyone is kind of mean to him, except this friend from America that he meets, But I mean, in real life, yeah, you had a lot of these players who really felt the competitiveness, and I was new in the team, and they wanted, both on the pitch and sometimes outside to, show who was in charge, basically, or find ways to put me out of, to help themselves, basically. But then there was other players as well that I've been in contact with after as well, that took good care of me. I had 2 Nigerian players also, except the Australian players who is now in the movie somehow combined into the American player there. But they were brilliant to me, and showed me around and so on. So I mean, it's always when you make a movie, you take the bits and the essence of it, and you dramatize it, basically. So it was like that. It was bullying in the team, and there was fights in the team, all that. But in real life, there was also 1 or 2 or 3 more good people who was also good support.
Yeah. Looking back on it now, like, how did you kind of get through it, basically? Like, how did you get yourself through those sort of dark times and start to move on sort of with your life? And
yeah, it was a journey in itself, I think. I mean, as the movie shows, and I mean, I went really dark and deep, and I went back to Sweden after this event that almost took my life. And I tried to get out of bed for the first 2 months while there was still discussions with Inter, who wanted me to come back and so on. And after a while, I started therapy after my parents said, like, yeah, you need help, you need to get out of bed, and need help to find a way through this, and forward. And then I decided to not go back to Inter. I said no to that, and the contract had to be ripped. And then I started a journey in this therapy of coming back to writing, basically. And that became super important, to start to put words on the experience. And that slowly also started to become this book in a way. I tried to play football for a couple of months more after a while, because I had kind of a physical need of still, playing. But then I read in a newspaper one day after I had done a good game that they wrote, like, now Bengtsson is back. He's going forward again. And then I realized when I read that, like, I don't want this anymore. It was just very clear. By breakfast, I was like, I don't want this. And then writing had started to take over as a dream and a goal, and an interest, and something that gave me energy. So I cut off very, very, like, brutal and changed direction in life. I mean, started to study, and then started to go deeper and deeper into writing. And as like, went to Berlin, started to write there, and music and so on. And then applying for schools, finally getting into schools, and now working with it, basically.
Yeah. And how are you these days? Do you still find yourself sort of dealing with your mental health, and are there certain things that you have to do to kind of maintain good health in that sense?
Yeah, I think I have an awareness of when I'm getting very obsessed with something, or when I started to lose perspective of things. I mean, what my story have taught me is that I need to constantly have perspective of things, and that nothing is worth fighting so hard for that it takes your life, or it in that way. So just by having experienced this, I mean, I naturally have a more laid back approach to whatever interest I have, or whatever work, or so on. I can still be very disciplined and very focused, and have goals, and really work hard. But when I feel like, okay, now it's getting a bit too much, I have no problem with stepping back and just giving myself a break, and, like, hey, look around. It's also, I mean, I got my first child, like, last summer. Those things, having a family and becoming a father, and all that also brings perspective. Like, sometimes trying to reach a goal can be very egocentric as well, you know, and when you get grounded when you have family and other people around you, basically, and that's been important for me,
Yeah,
as it is for a lot of people, I think.
yeah, absolutely. And just final couple of things. What do you hope people will get from the film? What do you hope the viewer are going to take from it?
I mean, an insight in the football industry that we might not have seen before, you know, to learn something about the you know, backside of football, but I think what's important to say, I hope that the film also will give the audience some hope, because I think there is hope in it as well, even though Martin goes through a very rough time in a, you know, a sensitive phase in life. He you know, he do it, but he also gets out of there. So what I want to the audience to have the feeling after is also that it's okay to try it, it's okay to fail, and you can, you know, get up again, and you can choose another direction, you know. So yeah, a little bit of that, and yeah, I would say.
And how have has the football world sort of received it so far, if they have, and you know, has it been sort of taken well in that sense? People involved in the game.
I think a lot. I mean, I hear from people, and you know, get invited and have been invited already with the book a lot, but of course a lot more now, and players reaching out and feeling that they are happy that this is, you know, put on the agenda, and they are getting mirrored in this movie and so on. So I feel it's been received very well, both from the general audience and by the critics and by the football world, at least here in Sweden. And now it's, I mean, it's interesting and curious to see how it's getting received in England, for example, now when it have the premiere there, and where they are around these questions now in England and so on, because I know that there have been players there also speaking out, both that are in it, but also after the career and so on. So yeah, I'm curious to see where it lands there. But I'm proud of the movie, and I'm very, you know, looking forward for it to meet the British audience as well.